Race number 9 of this second round robin stage of the Louis Vuitton America's Cup qualifiers. Outridge against Spithill, Sweden against America. The chase is on in the pre-start, and the Americans, we understand that technical issue was a broken rudder,
of which supposedly they might have replaced both rudders instead of just one. It'll be very interesting to see if their stability is affected. They're heading way down to the left-hand side of the box. That ley line, that elusive ley line, Spithill going for a hook, but he might turn up away from these guys, which he will right now, because that ley line, that is close haul. That is right on the wind, that yellow line right there. And
they have just taken a proper nosedive.
Get going.
The Americans.
20 seconds to go. Can they push hard enough? I think the Americans are in a tough spot right now.
And the Swedes protesting against them as well, so we'll learn the ruling of that very shortly, whether the Americans have picked up a penalty in this pre-start. Nathan Outridge, in the meantime, is heading off over the start line. No penalty to Oracle Team USA, but it is the Swedes who've got much the better start, and already they're at 35 knots.
Here we go.
You really got to wonder if that last-minute change on Oracle Team USA is going to affect their performance, because these boats, that fragile setup of perfect or bad, you know, there's no in between. We were kind of set up okay today. You're either great or you're not, and to have to go throw new rudders in right before the start, they may not be the perfect rudders for a day like today. Knowing them, they have spares for their spares. You know, it's still, it is a big question mark.
So the Swedes flying past the first mark and downwind, but look at the pace of the Americans here. 42, 43 knots. That's just about as quick as anybody's been going on this racetrack in any of the days that we've had out here in Bermuda.
15 seconds, stand by. Yep.
New rudders, old rudders, the speed remains exactly the same for Jimmy Spithill and co.
So Adam Minoprio out on the water taking a look around for us. Adam, can you imagine on your French team if all of a sudden 15 minutes before the start you had to go in and switch your rudders? Would that throw things way out of kilter, or would you be prepared for something like that?
I think the Oracle definitely for sure was prepared for something like that, and then the French team, we would be as well, but it would for sure upset you with your whole pre-start and the whole pre-race lead up, and I think we did see it upset Oracle there. They were late on their entry and just didn't look that stable in the pre-start, and you saw Nathan have a big win in the start.
Creatures of habit, you know, all sailors are. We all kind of like to do things on a step-by-step process on any given day out here. I'm sure all these teams have a playbook starting at about 5 in the morning for the guys working on the boat, who typically goes all night. I totally agree with Adam. It's not perfect to have to really change things up so dramatically right before a very important race like this, but it's part of the game.
Well, it's an important race for both parties, but for this lot, absolutely critical as they steam down towards the second gate, and they navigate it very nicely indeed. That was about as smooth as they could have asked for, but how important this race is for them. They could claw their way to 3 points. That would be alongside the Japanese. It would heap the pressure on the French, who take on the Kiwis next up, and then they've got one more race tomorrow. And it is Sweden against France tomorrow, which may end up being the big showdown to decide who leaves us.
Keep coming, keep coming. Keep coming. Yep. Okay, go for it, go for it. Right off boundary. Building like it. High build.
Pretty tidy from the Americans, popping back up on the foils nice and quick. And the chase is on yet again. Just 2 wins from their 7 races for the Swedes. Didn't race yesterday. And that inconsistency, which we saw during the Louis Vuitton America's Cup World Series, afflicting them here in Bermuda as well. We know this boat is super quick, Kenny.
Everybody keeps talking about it. We've seen it in person. You know, it's interesting. Oracle Team USA, when they get behind, they don't panic early. They kind of use their split at the opportune times. We've seen them have some really decent comebacks. They've actually been behind in several of their races, so they just keep it close, wait for the other guy to make a mistake, and use their speed. Right now, pretty even on the race course from a boat speed standpoint and basically from a fly time standpoint.
Back. High group all the time, yeah. 24's the nice.
So pretty much identical setup in terms of the grinding, although remember the Americans have the option of the bike at the back. One cyclone as opposed to those grinding in a more regular fashion.
If anything is conventional in these unconventional boats, it is that. It is the grinding, typical coffee grinders, which are pumping the hydraulics into the boat, through the boat to really power all the systems.
Going softer. Starting to go softer this way. High groove, thing lighter, lift on the inside. 2, 1, lift and pressure, little acceleration in this. Nice. Okay, back into that high groove.
Taking high layer.
That's Tom Slingsby up the front for Oracle Team USA, relaying the information.
That's all good. I was just going to comment about Slingsby.
High groove,
not just being a tactician, he's really being a tactician there. He wasn't actually grinding through that whole segment. He actually had his weight further forward up on that front beam.
High groove out of this.
Talking high groove for all people at home. That means tighter to the wind.
High groove.
Tighter to the wind, but definitely slower in boat speed. What they're trying to do is minimize the amount of tacks. If they can do this in only one more tack and get in through the gate, then obviously Artemis will have to do 2 tacks. They will also have a split at the top mark if they can pull that off.
Turning.
Attack from the Swedes, which they will be pleased with. Nice and easy through the water. The Americans similarly are looking to close the gap here.
You're gonna have to follow him. We've got a drive within 27.
We have a race on.
15 seconds here.
Because there is less and less between these two. Are the Americans going to have to maneuver one final time?
It does look like it. It looks like they couldn't get far enough over to the top of our screen to be able to. The boundary prevented them from doing just that one and in, that one tack and in maneuver. So they're going to have to go twice and maybe not make up quite as much ground as they were hoping. These guys look quick. Artemis looks good right now.
So let's bring in Adam Monoprio, again part of Groupama Team France. He's out on the water for us. Adam, you were intrigued by the notion of Tom Slingsby up the front there for Oracle Team USA.
Yeah, it was quite interesting to see him move out from grinding and charging the accumulators to keep the oil pressure up to moving his weight forward in the boat and really hiding behind the front beam, but getting the weight further forward, I think, helps a bit of performance boost on the boats as well. And it's interesting to see him move back and forward into the 2 positions.
And from a layman's perspective, how difficult a balancing act is that to pull off? Because, of course, you know, 9 times out of 10, 90% of the time he's there. He's got to be generating the power, hasn't he?
Don't be afraid to get faster.
Well, I think Oracle must just have a rather good system on board that they don't need him to be grinding all the time. But right now you see him, he's on the bike at the back, and downwind they would be using up a bit more oil with the boat traveling faster, having to adjust the foils more frequently. But also having the weight at the back will help keep the bow up and help keep the rudders in the water, so they'd be less likely to have a crash.
Exactly why we have the sailors joining us every day from different teams. We've had a sailor from almost every team at this stage.
BMG, but touch on the quick
We
side
will
if
not
anything.
be hitting that elusive 100% mark in this race, but when we're complaining about 97, you know, these guys are getting pretty sharp out on the water.
Hey, we're complaining about 99.6.
Yeah, that was unbelievable.
Well, the Swedes just stretching out here and making really good headway. The Americans have left themselves quite a bit to do. We've been hearing about their comebacks. Really good comeback yesterday on the 5th leg against the Japanese. Split the course, gambled a little bit, found that extra bit of pressure. Need something similar soonish.
What we've seen historically through this event so far is when you start as well as Artemis did, and they literally haven't made a mistake yet, you're not going to pass them. The speeds are similar enough that it's almost impossible to pass, and the wind shifts out on the race course don't seem quite as large today, which is probably not good for the boat behind, but certainly will ease the mind of the tactician of the lead boat, where the stress is always on, whether you cover, whether you split. How do you manage the race course?
117 meters.
Well, one of the benefits of this race course is its proximity to the shoreline, and all the spectators here getting a fabulous view of the teams in action, close up and personal, stadium racing.
Gorgeous race course here, and flat water in Bermuda, which is perfect for these boats.
Americans approaching the kind of point where they need the Swedes to slip up if they're to have a sniff here.
That's exactly correct.
And the Swedes don't look like making errors at this point. Just a reminder that a win here would put them on 3 points in the overall standings. They would be alongside the Japanese and 1 point ahead of the French. The French, coming out next against the New Zealanders, would have to win. They would have to win that and take it to the final race of the qualifying stages tomorrow. France, Sweden could be an absolute humdinger, but it's going to be right in the balance for Frank Hamas's men if the Swedes win this one.
You know, we always talk about the foils under the water. The foils above the water are the other part of the feature that these teams can really adjust as they see fit. You look at how hard they're pulling the wing to weather. That's across the center line of the boat is here, and how far they're pulling what we conventional sailors would term the lower leach of the wing all the way up to the high side. It's really it's a different world. It's a different way of thinking, and how much these guys have adapted into, look at that, the incredible mechanics that go into making these wings. Not only the camber, but the amount of twist as you go from bottom to top.
Yep.
Artemis looks like a pretty slick operation. I mean, really similar to the last race. The boat that won the start happened to be the better boat in that race as well, and we're seeing a real opening up. And I'll tell you, for the Oracle team, this is going to be a touch of a concern. I mean, the Japanese, which is a very similar, not exactly a sister ship, but certainly a similar setup, got pretty trounced by Emirates Team New Zealand in the first race today, and might give these guys a little bit of a break because of their rudder issues before the start and having to pull the boat out of the water just before the start of the race. But still, they're not going to be pleased with this. They won't make up excuses, I guarantee you that.
Oof. Oh dear. Not the best, but the recovery is a decent one.
It came out of nowhere. That was kind of an interesting moment. So maybe down to Adam. Adam, is it kind of puffy out there? We kind of see these guys getting a little loose at times.
No, I just saw that, but it didn't look too puffy out there. They probably just had a little slip up, but they've still got a commanding lead, and you know, it's going to be a bit of a miracle for Oracle to get back into this race.
Yeah, you get the impression that the Swedes are going to have to stuff their bows in a little deeper for the Americans to be able to reel them in from here. 42 knots rounding the gate from Nathan Outridge's men.
These bear-offs, both at the head-up at the leeward gate and the bear-off at the weather gate, are just incredible G-forces and really produce some of the fastest speeds that we ever see out of these boats.
Okay, stand
A
by.
lousy 41.5 on Oracle as they went around the mark compared to the 42 plus that we saw out of Artemis. Obviously, as I say sarcastically. The jet engines being revved up.
He's gone on our line. We're lower than him right now.
Apologies for those of you who feel this is like nails being scraped down a blackboard.
Or dogs running into from the neighborhood and licking the television set.
Does that happen a lot where you live?
Dog whistles, man, dog whistle.
Bring back those Bermudan tree frogs for me. And the USA a little quieter in their operation. A little bit more chatter though, generally between Spithill and Slingsby.
Nothing much the tactician can do at this stage. They're heading straight down the course. It looks like they're laying this bottom gate. Again, as we've said before, it would take as Adam just told us as well, it's going to take a pretty big mistake by Artemis to throw this one away.
Too bad waves. Too high.
Well, they need it. They really need this. Artemis Racing, Nathan Outridge will have G'd up his men in advance of this race.
It's just amazing to look at their faces, how used to going 42 knots they are. And no sailor, every sailor listening around the world understand 42 knots, everybody. I remember with my dad when I was a kid breaking the 10-knot barrier for the first time and being more scared than ever in my life.
Yeah, sometimes you just don't get a proper feel for it unless you are right there on the water's edge, which so many of these spectators here in Bermuda have the benefit of. Look at them there, really enjoying their day out and cheering the Swedes into the finish line. They are tearing it up, and this win gives them a really good shout now.
I don't think we've had anybody go 41 over the finish line, so that's a new record. We're going to give them lots of credit, and yes, in fact, they are in the parking lot for anybody who I can't see.
It's the skid finish.
My goodness.
From Nathan Outridge.
Oh.
And a big win for them over the defenders. Oracle Team USA, for them, it's only their second defeat. And on both occasions, the team to dish out those consequences have been Artemis Racing. So
there wasn't one overtaking lane.
Possibly disrupted by the broken rudder.
The Swedes won't mind at all.